Water. Joining us on the show this morning is Ieva Jusionyte, an anthropology professor at Brown University. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning, Ieva.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Ieva, your research takes a different approach to this conversation by looking at the impact of American guns crossing south into Mexico and how that contributes to the issue of violence in the region. Ieva, you worked as a paramedic at the southern border for years, and you've written a book titled Exit Wounds: How American Guns Fuel Violence Across the Border. Can you talk a little bit more about that title, Exit Wounds, and what you're trying to tell readers here?
So as a paramedic and an EMT, I've seen a lot of people who were injured by gun violence in the United States in various cities where I volunteered. But when I went to the border, where I was working both as an anthropologist and as a volunteer emergency responder, I started meeting all these people, migrants and asylum seekers, who were trying to get to safety in the United States, and they were fleeing gun violence. And I began to think more expansively about what exactly are the effects of gun violence. What are these exit wounds? What are the effects of gun injuries that are a little more broad, that affect society and community, not just individual bodies?
Yeah, but how do you feel American guns further the crime we're seeing taking place across the border in Mexico?
So Mexico has very strict gun laws, almost non-existent gun industry. There are only 2 gun stores where people can buy very limited amounts and very limited capacity weapons. That means that most of the crime that we see in Mexico that people are fleeing, whether it is kidnapping or murder or extortion, all of that is done with guns that are initially sold in the United States and then are trafficked across the border. According to estimates from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, over 70%, that's 70% of all crime, all guns recovered in crime scenes in Mexico were originally sold in the United States. Mostly Texas and Arizona border states, but also as far away as Montana and Wisconsin and Massachusetts.
Now, much of the conversation around the U.S.-Mexico border focuses on ramping up security presence, restricting entry for asylum seekers, but in your book, you speak to that actually worsening the issue. Can you explain that?
Well, yes, we kind of not connecting the dots that a lot of people who are running away from violence, they are coming here because of our guns going south, but also militarizing the border, making it more difficult for people to reach safety, strengthens organized crime groups in Mexico, because organized crime groups in Mexico now are also smuggling migrants, they are extorting migrants, and the harder it is for people to claim asylum in the United States the legal way, the more profitable this human trafficking and human smuggling business is becoming.
Ieva, do you think stricter gun laws, background checks, is a solution to the problem that we're seeing at the border?
Well, it's a very complicated question, because we don't really have enough data to know whether it is the gun industry, whether it is the specific gun dealers, like who is violating what laws so that all these guns end up in Mexico. I think one part of it is, yes, kind of tracking where our weapons are going, having background checks and things like that, but we cannot get ourselves out of this problem without also thinking about the demand. Why is there a demand for American guns in Mexico? And that has to do with including drug trafficking and the desire for drugs in the United States, which is how a lot of these organized crime groups make money that then they spend on weapons. So I think any solutions we're looking for has to involve more responsibility from gun industry and gun dealers, but also thinking about the demand, or why do these groups in Mexico want these guns?
And this is obviously a very unique perspective that not a lot of people are talking about. Is there a way to change the messaging that everyday Americans are receiving when you talk about immigration and the migrant crisis?
I think it is critical for us to understand that what we are seeing, it is a vicious circle of violence. That the drugs are coming north and people are coming north because of the money from those drugs that are sold here. going south and also guns going south. So like all of these components are in this together. And when we are thinking about Mexico and we say that, oh, all these migrants are coming and they are bringing their crime and it's not safe for the United States, well, we are completely ignoring the fact that we are contributing to making this a violent country. And I think just making these connections will help us find maybe more durable solutions, because clearly the policies we are designing now, just building more and taller walls and militarizing the border, they're just not working.
And Yeva, just from your perspective, for states who may not be bordering states, why do you think they should care about this issue as well?
Well, now we are seeing that a lot of migrants and asylum seekers who cross the border, they do not stay in border states. They travel wherever there is work or wherever there is a community. They go to Colorado and to New York and to Massachusetts and Wisconsin. So migration affects all of us. We see these new arriving migrants and asylum seekers in our communities. And some cities have received so many migrants that there is a strain on schools and on resources. And we are figuring out where can we get all this money to address the situation. So I think it is kind of a shared problem by all states and all communities, even very far away from the border.
Ieva Jusionyte, anthropology professor at Brown University, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.